Excellent. Well, welcome everyone who's joining our broadcast of the Tiara True Leadership Roundtable. So we welcome all of you who are with us live and those who will be listening to the broadcast later. This roundtable is brought to you by Tiara International. I'm Peg Rowe, one of the managing partners of the business. And today we're having a conversation around values-driven or values-based leadership, which is becoming kind of an interesting hot topic in organizations that we work with. And we thought it'd be interesting to have a dialogue with different leaders in different sectors who can bring sort of the reality of their experience to leading from a values basis. So we'll be talking with them today about their experience, their journey, and really, how they've explored this whole idea of bringing their values forward and having those being, relevant and intentional and modeled within their organizations. So before we get started, let me introduce our panel. So first I'm going to introduce Egbert Bolt, who is the chairman of the Electrical Engineering Education Department of Microelectronics at the Delft University of Technology. And yes, thank you for saying hello, so we know who you are. Egbert's both an educator and a department chair, and one of the things that I found so intriguing in talking with him is he has a real focus on working with both faculty and students to really inspire excellence and to really bring that excellence forward. And that is really a collaborative view that he has and a way that he actually works very much intentionally with both faculty and students. So he'll bring lots of great experience that will, really enlighten our conversation around how do you bring these two groups of people together in a way that forwards education and creates success and excellence. And next I want to introduce Jennifer Alter-Wharton.
Hello.
There's Jennifer. She's the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President at Baird & Warner, which is a $160 million real estate company located primarily here in Chicago, but it also have other locations. She is primarily responsible for marketing, technology, and the human resources aspect of the business. And she's been with Baird & Warner for 20 plus years. So she has really lived this organization. And it's really founded on the family values that were in place as the business came to fruition. So a big piece of her job is actually ensuring that those values continue to be forwarded and continue to be represented by the business and how they operate with and really work with the clients and customers that they serve. And then lastly, I want to introduce Suzanne Surface. Suzanne is in a newly created role at NiSource, which is a large utility company in the Midwest of the States. She is the new Chief Services Officer. And it really, I think, is one of those things that, for me, is a real recognition of the import that NiSource places on having a high level of customer service and really paying attention to and serving customers in a way that is beneficial to the company, but also beneficial to the customers. So Suzanne's creating this new role, and it's the outgrowth of lots of different roles. She's been with NiSource for over 30 years. So, and she looks like she must have started when she was 5. I get that. You can imagine how she could have been there for 30 years. But all of that experience really comes together to have her be a very vocal advocate for the level of service that we want to provide to customers. So I think that's going to be fantastic. And then last, good morning, say for sure. And then last, we have Betsy Sobiech, who is a partner in Tiara as well, one of my business partners here. And she is behind the scenes producing for us. So those of you who are online with us, we have a chat box. And if you have a question, you can enter it in the chat box. And if Betsy sees the question and knows it might be something different that we haven't already planned to include in the conversation, she'll let me know and we'll see what we can do to fit that question in. So please feel very comfortable. Okay, that was a little technical glitch. I don't know what that was all about, but at any rate, we'll move forward. So, because our panelists represent different organizations and they've had different paths of getting to this idea of values-driven leadership, I really want to start with this, with sort of a definition of how would we generally describe and define values-driven leadership. So I would say, when I looked at lots of different definitions out there, sort of what came together for me is that values-driven leadership is a commitment by leaders at all levels to connect their values to core organizational values. So there's the leader's values, and they're connecting them to the core values of the organization and lead from those aligned values. So it's really bringing both pieces together. So it's not just supporting the organization's values, but finding that connection point between who you are as a leader and the organization that you're leading in, and then leading from that set of combined shared values. Individual leaders have really the responsibility to clearly articulate those values and to connect them together so that the staff, people they're working with, have a real sense of how those values live. So before we go further, I just want to open it up for a moment and say, is there anything any of you would add to that definition? How might you enhance that definition? Is that what you know? Okay, so we'll move on then. So the next thing that I want to do is hear a little bit about each of your journeys, because you've each come to this whole idea of embodying values-driven leadership differently. And the first place I'm going to start is with Jennifer, because one of the things that you talked about when we were in our conversation was that your values as an individual really began to emerge out of your family, that your family has a strong value orientation, if you will, and that began to inform your values early on. So you want to describe a little bit about your journey with your family, how that influenced, and then sort of how you've gotten to that place as a leader.
Sure. Good morning again, everyone. I grew up in Chicago in a family that held the very, very strong, high belief and bar that we were put here to make a difference, and that it was our obligation as members of society and citizens of Chicago and representatives of our family that we leave the world a better place. And it sounds corny, but it also sounds like it resonated a little bit with Peg, and I still believe it. And it's a mantle to wear that is heavy at times, but it's also a huge opportunity. And I also grew up with a family, and I don't think we really talked about this, Peg, that was in a family business, a third generation.
No, we didn't. Yeah, that's right.
Did not end up sustaining. And so as I was going through my career, and I had my own marketing consulting firm before I came here, I ended up being attracted to family businesses that were enduring and standing the test of time. And I just want to mention Baird & Warner is owned and actively managed by the fifth generation. We were founded in 1855. And so I started gravitating towards companies as clients that were manifesting my values already. And one of them actually turned out to be family business and a commitment back to the community, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that was how I really ended up here. And I can talk a little bit more about what we do here, but I think I'll do that a little bit later. Or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think we can do that a little later. The other value that I hear in there is sustainability, the experience of your own family and not having that business feel sustainable, I think definitely plays a role in your commitment to the sustainability where you are.
Correct.
Yeah, excellent. So Edward, I'm going to go to you next, because similarly, you had family influences around the value system that you operate in. So you want to share a little bit about that. And I know your father in particular was very influential for you in sort of establishing those values early on.
Yeah, well, my father went to Indonesia as a mission doctor to make a difference also. And so I was born there and lived my first 8 years in Indonesia. And I say, for a long time, I wondered what kept him going so positively. Mm-hmm. And he was worried about the family because there was a kind of civil war on the brink of starting. That was dangerous. But we lived close to the hospital, and he was always ready to go there. So I thought, where does he get his energy from? Why is he never scared? And later, after returning, he told me, didn't burn down the hospital because they really worked for poor and low people. And I think and I believe that was what saved his life also. So I think that value-driven approach of him, gave him that position and maintained him there to do his job. And I think that touched me and that influenced me strongly. And later on, when I realized it was genuinely driven out of his values, so he internalized this and emulated this belief in the way he executed it. And I think for part what I've been copying, and in some sense, to me, it was a way to continue his legacy. You know? It's just never give up on people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I think that's a great thing that you can, to point out that for you, this is a way of honoring your father. So, you know, part of the way you live your life from this spot of being very focused on values is a way of honoring your father and the way he lived his life.
Yeah. And if I might add, what was the interesting part to me to notice was if you bring good, you receive good.
Yeah.
And that's an eternal source.
Yep. It sure enough is. Thank you. So Suzanne, I'm going to turn to you next because I think your experience is one that mirrors what it is for a lot of us. We all have values. It's not like we have to go make them up and figure them out, but we aren't always as, they aren't always as readily apparent to us. Right. So, you know, Egbert and Jennifer had the experience of feeling very grounded in their values and very aware of their values early on from their family. I think you're like a heck of a lot of us, myself included, where we may not have really considered what our values are, and we've had to uncover those and really bring them forward at a later point in our life. So why don't you share a little bit about your some of your journey to get to that place that you now have a really strong sense of those values and you lead from those values.
Yeah, and Peg, I just want to also give Tiara a real shout out in this regard because you've really helped me in the really thinking about and really bringing forward my values and thinking about how to use that as part of my leadership brand and who I am in the office. So
yeah.
You know, what I would say is obviously like Egbert and Jennifer, and what wonderful company to be in. I'm humbled to be part of this panel with the two of you because you have such great life experiences. You know, I started out my career journey and with those core values, and I think, you know, a strong work ethic, you know, a value of integrity, doing what I promised to do. But I think the lens that I applied to that early on in my career was around, these are the things that I should do to create individual success and an individual opportunity. And I think as I started to progress in my career, really examining those values through those new experiences as an emerging leader really helped me to understand that I can bring those values to how I lead my teams. And then one of the probably the most significant early experiences that I had was really becoming a new mom at around that same time that I was becoming a new leader. And so Jennifer, what you were just raised with and what was just a clear and obvious guiding you around stewardship and the importance for what you do in the community and how you operate in the community and how you can really foster a sustainable and long-term environment, that became really clear to me as a new mom, and that was really eye-opening. It wasn't something that I had really thought about before.
Yeah.
And so now in my current role, I clearly have opportunity to impact the organization and how our organization really shows up for our customers and the kinds of principles that we really hold dear as we serve those customers and really establishing that level of trust, integrity, care, and long-term sustainability as we interact with our customers and our communities is really how I see my role at this point.
Great, and again, I do think it's a real interesting observation that you know you have been in this role that's created to really provide that level of focus, which shows a real commitment on the part of the organization to breathing life into those values and making sure that they are understood throughout the organization. So we've talked a little bit, and I appreciate each of you sharing your journey. We've talked a little bit about what it is and sort of how you came to be a values-driven leader. What's the advantage of leading from that perspective? So Jeff, I'm going to start with you again. What do you see as the sort of the outcome when you lead from there? You know, what's the impact that it has on the organization?
I think probably the most significant, and there are probably two impacts for us. One is that we, and I think Peg, in some of our earlier conversation, which I found exceedingly useful as well, we have 2,500 independent contractor agents who represent our company and help buyers and sellers with their real estate sales and purchases. And it's a business that it doesn't really always rate very high on the scales of being reputable. And so it's very, very important to us that we are represented and attracted and filled with people who adhere and believe in delivering their service with the highest professional and ethical standards. So from the standpoint that integrity and ethics and doing the right thing are key values to us, it's important for our service and our end product and our clients, and for everybody who works for us, that we set very high standards of integrity, so that we do the right thing on behalf of our customers. At the same time, we have built the company on a culture of referral. And this is one of sort of the really big things that I think has been important for us. If our people are attracted to us because of our values. And so it's sort of like attract like is attracting like, and we're helped by some things. For example, we've been the top workplace in Chicago for the last 7 years, so we get some attention from that. But having our employees and our agents and our loan officers refer others into our business means that they're selecting us because our values sync and resonate, and that's where the beauty and the magic really occurs.
Yeah, and I really am impressed by the fact that in your business, you only have, I think by definition, 400 full-time staff, and the other 2,500 are independent contractors. And I think a lot of people would say, wow, getting all those people, on board and sharing the same values and representing the company with those values, that is tricky. It's not necessarily easy. So kudos to, the processes and structures you've put in place that really allow for that to happen.
Sorry.
That's all right. I know. This is always the dilemma of like,
I didn't think about that one.
You never know. Yeah. So Suzanne, say a little bit about, what you see as the benefit of leading from values in NiceHorse and the work that you do.
Right. So I was thinking about this. It's really not an important thing. It's the important thing. If you think about the utility business and what we do for customers and with customers, we literally are connected with wires and pipes into customers' businesses and homes. And through those wires and pipes, we're delivering, the energy that we need day to day to do everything that we do that keeps us warm, that keeps us in business, that powers our lighting, all of those kinds of things. And when that goes well, it's one of those services that customers just are, safety and reliability is just an expectation. It's not even a consideration, and it shouldn't be for customers. They should just know and trust that we're there to serve them. Yeah. And so as we think about how we provide the services that we provide every single day, that's really key for us. It's care for the customer, and that's the foundation. And then safety is the core value that's built around that. Yeah. And so, and when that is going well, then we have everything that we need to be able to provide the right kind of service and to build upon from our customers, for our customers. And if that foundation is shaken in any way, then we have a lot of trust to rebuild. And I think Peg, and maybe I can share a little bit more of this in a bit, but we're in one of those situations right now at NiceHorse, and we're working very, very hard to regain and rebuild that trust.
Right. And I think it's interesting because, utilities, at least in the United States, is something we literally take for granted. It's like an invisible service. We turn things on and we expect them to work. And when they don't, it's interesting because there's almost can be a sense of broken trust. Now, most of the time when things don't work, it's because of there are other extremely, challenging circumstances that cause that. So it doesn't necessarily diminish our faith in the utility companies, but it's all of a sudden you realize like, oh, how important it is to have heat or electricity or whatever it is that you need that you just every day, you just take for granted it's always there. So, the commitment that NiSource makes to that, providing that service and providing it safely is extraordinary. So Egbert, I'm going to repeat something you shared with me when we talked about this question, and you said that what is so important to you about being a values-driven leader is it is a sustainable source of energy and passion, and it's why you love your job. And I thought, well, wow, that's a great reason to be a values-driven leader. It's like at the end of the day, you'll love what you're doing. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think the important thing is leading by example and that you show it. Like we are in education, so you need to create a safe and truthful environment to inspire and empower each other. But it's show you love your students, show you love your team, and take time to share important things.
Yeah.
If I just may add, in my previous university, we went through a very harsh period because we went down in the public opinion to some stupid mistakes. And we really had to go back to our basic values. And that's why we survived. Students especially kept choosing us because they didn't felt being a number just attached to us. And I think that's if you go back to your core values.
Yes, it is. It's like a touchstone. It's a place to return to. Like remembering and having those values is always a place to go back to when things get slippery, when things don't feel like they're going the way you want them to. Yeah.
And if you really connect, there's always magic there.
Yes, the magic. We love the magic. All right, so one thing I want to stop and just say welcome to anybody who may have joined after we began today. We're in a great conversation around values-driven leadership, and we're getting ready to turn our attention from the what is it, how'd you get there, to the question of the practical questions like, okay, now, how do we actually lead from this place of values-driven, of having our values in place? And so I really want to talk about, what are your best practices for leading from values? How do you embody values? Some of those practical things where someone could say, okay, I get that. I know my values now. What the heck do I do with that? So how do we move forward? So Suzanne, I'm going to call on you, if you would, to start us off on this part of the conversation, because you've talked about the importance of your actions, and then you've had some great examples that you shared with me the other day around where values-driven leadership really takes the forefront, and in your organization it's very clear to see where that leadership is taking a stand around values.
Sure. Yeah. So if you think about, again, back to the safety as a core value, we really embed safety as essentially almost as a habit of, where we are practicing and visibly demonstrating safe practices on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and just embed it into how we operate on a day-to-day basis. And so just some examples that we as a culture do across NiSource. You'll notice if you come to visit us that we, as an organization, you pull through parking or back into our parking spots so that we have a clear and free exit when we're leaving a parking space. And so that's one of those practices, one of those habits that we've established. We start meetings with safety amendments. So we have a lot of, you said touchstones, really visible leadership practices that we're establishing and that we perform really day after day that demonstrate that commitment to safety.
Yes. And I think that's the thing that I really am appreciating about the examples from NiSource is that these aren't just sort of momentary, occasional things that a leader does, but these are definitely the red thread that go through the entire organization. Like, it is always a consideration. There are always decisions made that are biased around how do we maintain safety in the workplace. You know, there are always these ideas about being observant and aware of your surroundings and how you would react if you needed to. So it really does feel like it breathes a lot of life into this value. This isn't just a value that sits on a board in a conference room, but it actually is something that is observed and part of the everyday fabric of the organization. And not just for folks in the field who day to day are dealing with safety issues, but for everybody, no matter where you are. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So Jennifer, tell me a little bit about what you would add. I know a lot of your view is that you are the person who is modeling this values-driven leadership, and that you're being observed all the time, and that you comport yourself in a way that is reflective of that. So you want to add a little bit more to that part of the conversation?
Sure, of course. It's very important to me and to us that our leadership, I'm sorry to use this phrase, walks the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And since we have a lot of eyes on us and we need to be aware of that at all times, we need to be sort of highly cognizant that every action we take is, I think Egbert used the word modeling, is demonstrating the behaviors we'd want in other people. So, and anybody, again, that's representing us all the way to what we deliver as a service. So, as I think I mentioned to you that I work really hard, you know, and somebody else also brought up the idea of work ethic. I wouldn't expect anybody that works for or with me to work harder than I do. And I think that's just sort of an important standard to hold. Mm-hmm. I walk down the hall, and if I see a piece of paper, I pick it up. I help to clear a conference room. So this is not really because I want to do these things, although they're sort of ingrained in me. It's because that's what we want to do, to treat each other with respect, and to also work in an environment that this is a competitive industry. Everybody's independent, and work in an environment where people are collaborative and supportive and respectful of each other, because one of the things we do believe is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And we, again, have people that compete against each other, but will work to build that greater whole. So I try to inculcate that with my actions. And I don't know if this is the point where you ask for advice, but my piece of advice on how to do that is to get enough sleep.
That's a great piece of advice.
Because I think that if you're not sort of on top of it, you're not necessarily as cognizant of the behaviors you should be demonstrating.
Yeah, that's another one of those topics that is really coming to the forefront, in large part, I think, to Arianna Huffington, who really put a spotlight on people just don't get enough rest. People need more sleep. And, you know, it kind of sounds revolutionary, right? Because for so many years, people took pride in, you know, like, I work harder than everybody else and I don't get enough sleep. And now it's like, no, you actually need sleep. If you're going to make good decisions, you need sleep. The other thing I love that you said to me is that leadership is like a daily habit, like brushing your teeth. I thought, wow, what a great way to think about it. It's like, yes, it's something we do every day, and it's a habit, and we build that muscle, and we bring that leadership forward because we do it on a regular basis, and it's something that we do every day. It's part and parcel of who we are.
It's who we are. I think that's really, and, you know, I will tie it again to this idea of ethics, even though, you know, that is something that can end up on a wall. But in our business, it's our name and our reputation, mm-hmm. and you know, we're just very proud, and it's important to us. So ethics is our safety, our version of Suzanne's safety. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what I'm loving in this part of the conversation, what I really was wanting, and thank you for providing it, is these examples of how to translate values from being that thing that sounds, you know, sort of noble and lofty into what are the practical behaviors and actions every day that we take that actually demonstrate that. So you wouldn't have to say to somebody, here's my value. If we asked people and they were observing you, they might not use exactly those words, but your values will come shining through because your actions really support, and those behaviors support who you are as a leader and the things that you hold dear, which is great. So Abraham, I'm going to turn to you because I know one of your really important values is this idea of having shared values, and particularly between your faculty and the students. And
Yeah.
so we want to speak a little bit about some of the things that you do to enable those shared values to really come forward between these two groups.
Yeah, for one thing, it mentioned several times, you lead by example, so walk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And you should show each time what the outcome can be if you really connect together. The total can be much more than the sum of the individuals if you do it together. I think if you sit down with each other and take time to maintain that conversation about trust and values, finally it pays off. And I think, and Jennifer said, and if I may, you need sleep. I've times worked so hard that I got disconnected in some way from my true self, and then you start working on routine, and that's what others do also. And then all of a sudden, work becomes less nice. There's not that energy around you anymore that empowers others and uses as an inspiration. And so if you don't pay enough attention to the true and core values, you go back to your old paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
Try to show to my teams that if you really invest and take time to really internalize those values, it will really pay off. But you can't give up.
Yeah, and I think what you've done is really naturally lead us to the next part of the conversation, which is how do we then embed those values in the culture? Because again, you've talked a lot about what NiceVerse is doing to embed the values in the culture. And Jennifer, I'd like for you to speak to that as well. And particularly one of the things that intrigued me was how you view the selection process and the interview process as a way of ensuring that there is alignment between people that you're bringing on board and the values that exist in the organization. Since I really see you as being sort of the holder of the values at Baird & Warner. It's like that's a piece of what you do is you hold those high and you make sure that they live on.
We thank you, and when we interview, we're looking for examples without asking overt questions of indications that people's values, I'll use the word sync again, would be consistent mm-hmm. with ours. So we'll sort of ask behavioral kind of questions with, what have you done when there's been gray area around, should you report something? Shouldn't you report something? Should mm-hmm. you sweep it under the carpet? So that one is too obvious, but we'll have questions that screen for whether they're people that really subscribe to this sort of high standard of doing the right thing and integrity. We'll ask a little bit about, we'll be screening for, do you help the person next to you? Because again, we have a very collaborative environment. We won't ask that question exactly, but those are the kinds of behaviors that we're looking for. Are they somebody who holds the same things important and dear that we do, so that we can protect and cherish and keep our culture of doing the right thing shiny? And that's again why this idea that I think I mentioned to you, I have this day when I'm able to ask the 50 or 60 agents this month that have joined us, and they've joined us by, it's a choice. There's a lot of alternatives. I ask them why they chose, and when they tell me that they were recommended by somebody here, which, it's an A day, it's a report card day. If I get 100% of them saying that, which is happening more and more frequently, that's when I know that what we're offering is resonating to the kind of person that's attracted to us, and that built a greater whole again.
Yeah, and so what I want to really underscore here is that in the very beginning we talked about, as a leader, you need to have clarity around your own values, and then you need to examine how do those align to the organizational values. And now Jennifer's taking us the next step, which is how do they align with the values of the people who are working for us? How do we ensure that as we're bringing staff on, that values alignment already exists? Because you're not trying to, quote, teach values. It's like it's sort of you have them or you don't. And if there are key values that are important to your organization, then how in that selection process do you begin to suss out, is there alignment there? Is someone joining our company who is very likely to line up beautifully with the way we do things? Because that's important to them too. And it doesn't mean that their values are right or wrong. It's just, do they align? Do they match? Are we a good fit? Does that really come together in a way that is going to make this an easy transition and have them feel like, sort of a happy, member of the team? Yeah. So, Egbert, anything more you want to add to that in terms of embedding values in the culture? You have a very unique culture. Yeah.
Yeah, you just mentioned alignment, and I think that's important. And to me, it's being part of the team also. So I try to lecture, and so I'm one of them. And it's not someone in management who tells them to fill in that form and they are busy, but we have to do it. I live the same life as them. And that makes me much more trustful. And that makes me also that I can show them how they can, in some way, stay, maybe the word's not right, happy with what I do. Mm-hmm. And it's all about alignment. Yep. And the pitfall is that we quite often don't take enough time to sit down about it. You take for granted that you think what I experience and it's so logic for me.
Right.
Feel and see also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quite often I just continued rushing through.
Yep. We think everybody's just like us, and they're not. And that's okay that they're not, but we need to test for that.
Yeah. Everybody will agree on values, but how to internalize it and live.
Right.
That's
right.
And that takes time.
And so that brings us, I love that the part of the question that we want to go to next is, so then what happens when you discover that someone's values aren't aligned within the company? A situation occurs, or it just becomes clear as they're working. I know Jennifer and Suzanne, you both had examples of things where when those values are out of alignment, what do we expect of people and how do we handle that? So Jennifer, you want to go first, and then I'll have Suzanne pick up on that one as well.
This is always tricky, and it's always sensitive, yes. And it's actually a perfect example of when values can help you, mm-hmm. because they can make difficult decisions very clear.
Right.
And we have had situations, fortunately not very frequently, where we have asked people who are big contributors to the business but are not constructive members of the environment to find another opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that oftentimes takes actually quite a bit of, I don't know, courage is probably too strong a word, but fortitude.
Yeah.
But our preserving our culture and our environment and what we hold dear is more important than, any one individual. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, but it's, yes. You got to be there and clear-eyed when it does.
When it does, yeah. Well, and part of it is because in your selection process, you're actually screening for those things. So that helps. So you should minimize then the number of opportunities where that comes up in a way that you would have to deal with it. So Suzanne, let's talk with you next, because you had a really interesting example, I thought, of a safety issue in the field that actually didn't involve NiceHorse directly, and yet your values as a company came through.
Oh, right. And just to piggyback off of what Jennifer said as well, those difficult decisions are very clear. They might not be easy, but they're clear. You know the path forward, you know what you have to do because of the situation. So what we had in the field, and this is embedded through our organization, through our field organization, in the form of the ability and the expectation that if they see an unsafe working environment, that they will stop work. And that is the responsibility at any level, and the expectation at any level, and that is to be taken seriously. And so the situation that we had, which involved a crew that was working alongside, I believe it was a municipal water crew. And so our gas folks were doing some line work alongside the water crew. the water crew had a trench that was in rough conditions. The trench was getting larger and larger. They were lowering an employee into the trench, and it had no shoring. And this is, as we know, a significant life-threatening type of environment for an employee, where that trench could collapse and trap an employee, and it would be considered a potential for serious injury or mortality. And that crew was so distressed by the situation, they went to the other crew's supervisor and talked to them about, hey, you really need to stop work, you really need to make this safe. They didn't get attention through the direct supervisors of the other crew, and so they ultimately called the fire department and then brought in the local fire department to stop work because they knew the significance of the safety issue that was in front of them. And so to help communicate that and to help reinforce that, we created a video and really lifted up those employees as a way to demonstrate that is just such a clear and vital and foundational value that we hold at NiSource.
Yeah. So in talking through this, I actually was reminded of a quote that I particularly like from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, who are the authors of the Leadership Challenge. And they say, clearly articulating and, more importantly, demonstrating one's values forms the basis of a leader's credibility. And credibility in leadership is character-based. So I really love that, this whole notion that values-driven leadership really gets at the character of the leader. Like, who are you? What do you stand for in the good times and the bad times when things need to be dealt with? It's really a test of our character as a leader. And I love that you all made the point that when your values are clear and articulated, you know what they are, these tough decisions are still tough to make, but there's really no wavering from them. You know exactly what to do, because your values, are directing that. There's no wavering from the values that you espouse and the values you model and the values that you live. So you have to make that tough call, and yet you're bolstered by the fact that you're supported by your values. These are not something that are going to change in a whim, which is great. So we're coming towards the end of our time. So I'm going to ask each of you to give that last final piece of wisdom or advice or something that you would like to leave our listeners with as we wrap up today. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. What would you say as a final piece of advice?
So I feel like I have a lot of platitudes today, but I think the word that's flashing in front of my eyes right now is authenticity. And so I think what you just said about it being character-based, it really, if you can't live in your own skin and love it every day and have it be who you are and then have it be what you want reflected in the environment, then you're not having the fun that Egbert's talking about. And we spend a lot of time at work, so we want to be able to have fun. And that ties into sort of the other thing that I would say, which is we put a pretty high premium on humor here.
Good.
And so for example, the executive team we dread it, but we're often doing videos where we're having a snowball fight or just doing stuff to show that we're human and we have a little bit of a silly part to us that makes everybody be in it together. Yep.
Yeah, that's great trust building as well. When you let your hair down and you show up as a regular person, that really clears the way for people to be able to trust you as a leader. So I love that part of it. So Egbert, what about you? What would your final words of wisdom be?
Well, it's has been said. Be your true self, truthful. Humor is very powerful. I always look for that if you have a job interview. And I want to stress again, if you base your acts on values, it allows you to do changes. Mm-hmm. You just trust old paradigms. And it always helped me to go for certain parts. And I think it always brought me there for innovation and new paths. And then you can show the others that it was the right decision. If you stick to old paradigms, change. Yep. It's static.
Yeah, so it's really about that continual level of growth, like growing and stretching yourself so that new paradigms are actually possible. Yeah.
Not even the sky is the limit if you own value.
That's true. That's true. So Suzanne, what's your final word of wisdom for everybody?
I'm gonna give a shout out for inclusion and diversity as it relates to values, because you see where companies who I'm sure they may have started out with good intentions, but yet they slip away, and all of a sudden, you look at a situation and you say, how on earth did this leadership team get to that point? Yeah, and how did they allow their focus, their customer service, whatever it is, to get to that point of degradation? So I think inclusion and diversity provides those other voices and those other lenses that shine that light on your values and your actions, and really can hold you accountable, and provide you that clear and very direct feedback around, hey, am I really acting in a way that's congruent with my values? Are we demonstrating through our actions what those values are? And are we really listening to how we're being received, and is there an issue here? And so I think that's just another way to maybe test that ability to demonstrate those actions in connection with the core values of the organization.
Wonderful. Yeah, so this has been so great. I feel like we could talk for another hour, and I really appreciate each of you coming and joining and really helping us to get through this conversation down to the place that we're actually talking about the practical implications of working from your values, leading from your values. How do you make them real? How do you bring them forward? What's the benefit? And the real true benefit, it feels like in some respects, is these are your, I think of it as like your North Star. These are the things that guide you, and when you're clear about them, then easy things are easier and hard things are easier. So we make that happen all the way through. So thank you, all three of you, very much. I appreciate that we had these different facets of organizations being represented to really demonstrate that this is a universal need to really be driven by our values and sharing that with our organizations and with the staff that are in them. I also want to thank Betsy for behind the scenes producing for us and making sure that all is attended to. And I really want to thank everybody who is listening. I know we have quite a few people on live listening now, and there will be a huge number that will listen later when it's convenient for their schedule. So thank you for all of you for tuning in and doing that. I think I have a couple of final thoughts that I would add. The idea that values-driven leadership is really lived out in the everyday behaviors of leaders. So back to Jennifer's point, it's like brushing your teeth. It's the daily habit of leadership. And when we lead from our values, it becomes something that's ingrained to us, and people come to recognize it. And it's not a surprise. They actually know who we are, what we stand for, and what we expect from ourselves and what we expect from them. And so as leaders, for me, it becomes then that necessity to really be clear, like have that clarity. What are your values? How do they connect to the organization? How do you want to model and live those so that you're showing up every day congruent with and consistent with the values that you have? So one of the things that we're offering, if you would like as a leader to really get more connected more deeply to your own values and really sort out how do you live them, how do you lead from them, we're going to be doing a 90-minute intensive around this whole topic on March the 7th. So we would invite you to join us if this is something that you actually want to get more practice at, and to have the opportunity to dive deeper for yourself so that you can be even more aware and intentional as a leader. And you can register for that by going to our website. And so we would encourage you to go to tiaraleadership.com. And there you can register. We'd be happy for you to join us as we do our best to really get engaged with this whole idea of values-driven leadership and make sure that all of us are really living our values as we move forward. So I want to thank everybody for being on the call with us. If you like this program and you like the conversations we're having, you can also like us at Facebook Live on our page. And we will add our Facebook page, and you can join our Friday Facebook Live conversations, and then these virtual roundtables that we do 3 or 4 times a year. So thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to our 3 panelists once again for doing a great job. We really appreciate it. And we hope everyone has a terrific day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Peg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great to meet everybody.